Welcome everybody to the Carbon Tracking Scope 3 webinar, where we will launch or where we introduce our newest module to our product. I'm extremely happy and proud that I can present this webinar because after a few months of hard work and dedication from our development team, we've come up with our latest module, which enables all of our customers and everybody in the food and beverage industry to track their carbon footprint throughout the entire software of Apicbase, and also use that information to their customers and to their end users. Before we jump into the webinar itself, let me introduce myself and my colleague Tess, who will be doing the product webinar. My name is Carl, and I'm a co-founder and CEO at Apicbase. I will first do a little bit of a recap on what is ESG and why are we building this module. And Tess will then afterwards join us to do the product demo. So before the product demo, let's recap on scope 1, 2, and 3. Then dive a little bit deeper in what scope 3 exactly is, because that's obviously what Apicbase will be helping to solve in your organization. And then when you need to report, and how obviously Apicbase can help you to reduce your footprint. So the first thing that you need to know, obviously, on the whole ESG carbon footprint reporting, is that there's basically 3 scopes which you need to master. And the first and the second one are, let's say, the easiest of the 3. The first one is the direct emissions scope, which is about the sources that you directly own or control within your organization. So a very simple example of that is fuel you are using in your company or in your company's vehicles. So to reduce scope 1, a simple solution would be to replace your cars from fuel cars to electric cars, and you will reduce your scope 1 emissions. The second scope is the indirect emissions, which actually come through the purchase of electricity or energy. And a way to reduce those is buy from a green supplier or install electric solar panels to create your own energy. And this way you can reduce your scope 2 emissions. And then we come to the third emissions, the third scope, which is the other indirect emissions. And the other indirect emissions are everything that has to do with your supply chain, everything that has to do with indirect sources, such as your production and your transportation, but also waste, etc. And this is obviously the one where the most, and it's the most difficult one to reduce because it involves a lot of things that you need to control in order to reduce the emissions. Now, why would you want to reduce this scope 3? And obviously, there's a few reasons why you would want to do this. We all know the legal reason, and the European Union, but also other countries, have created laws about reduction of carbon footprint emissions or greenhouse emissions because they believe, and that we believe it as well, that we need to reduce our emissions to have a healthy planet. Well, the legal requirement is obviously the most stringent one. It is why you have to kind of change, but there are other reasons why you want to reduce your scope 3 carbon emissions. And one of those is because you will experience more and more pressure from investors, customers, and consumers to be transparent about your carbon footprint emissions, and also, for example, to unlock money and capital from your investor they will require you to report on ESG because they need to report it themselves. Then there is another reason why, for example, consumers, they also are becoming more and more vocal about how green they want to eat. So they will also want to understand, you know, what kind of ESG reporting and what kind of carbon footprint you have as a company. And also, if you're, for example, a catering business, you will have customers that also need to report on this ESG, and they will put the problem basically at your table, and you will have to solve that for them, especially when it comes to F&B. Now, these are, let's say, very clear, let's say, pressures that you will experience or that you are experiencing already. But besides these pressures, there's also the real reputation that you want to work on. If you honestly and truthfully reduce your carbon footprint, it will improve your image. It will improve the way you are looked at by the consumer, but it will also give you a competitive advantage because there's plenty of examples of businesses that have changed from meat to plant-based food that actually also do this in a very profitable way. So it is not just reputation, it is also gaining competitive advantage. And finally, we all believe that we need to transition to a low carbon economy. We as a company at Apicbase, we have this in our vision since 2017, where we try to contribute to a sustainable food service business, both on reducing waste, but also on making a healthy bottom line. And this ESG and this carbon footprint reporting is right at the core of our vision to build a more sustainable a more sustainable food and beverage management industry. Now, we've talked about why you want to do the carbon footprint emission reduction, but let's focus on what it is. And again, the scope 3 are all the emissions indirectly caused by business activities, including your supply chain, your purchased goods, your waste, and transportation. Now, not everybody needs to do this at the same time. Europe, but also other countries, have introduced certain points in time in which certain sizes of businesses need to report on this. And it all starts next year for the largest publicly listed and large companies, but everybody will follow. In 2026, it'll be all businesses above 200 employees or 40 million turnover. And then in 2027 already, also the SMEs will have to comply to these rules. And it goes even as far as large non-EU companies will have to start reporting on this in the European Union from 2028. So it is now that you need to start acting so you can start tracking your carbon footprint so you can also work on reducing this. Now, how can Apicbase help to report this? Well, the first step that you will do is get data from a third-party supplier and import this into Apicbase. So there's plenty of third-party suppliers already doing this data analysis, and they will use the ingredients you're using in your business, and they will enrich this with a lot of data, such as your carbon footprint emission, but also land use, water use, the protein source, and all of that data will be entered into the system at Apicbase at an atomic level. Then the second step is to automate this data across all levels in the business. We just mentioned the ingredient side, so that's where you do the data assurance. but then Apicbase offers you the capability to have calculated recipes, which you then can use in your organization to communicate about the level of carbon emission that these recipes have. And you can also allow your end users to make a smart decision on whether or not they want to have a, let's say, green carbon footprint emission recipe or a red one because maybe they don't really care about it. Then when you've done this, you can also, and when you're using our procurement module, Apicbase will also give you a purchase goods purchase dashboard in which we will give you the total overview of the carbon footprint emissions over all of the items you've purchased in a certain period of time. And this will allow you to see the reduction or increase of your carbon footprint. So you can actually see your reduction over time in this dashboard, and it will help you to get to the reductions you require and you've set yourself as a goal. And finally, we've also included eco labels. I think we support up to 70 now, and we're adding more and more as we speak. But this allows you to also use the certain eco labels that you have in your organization and you want to communicate to your customers. And these are labels like fair trade, but also beter leven or anything like that. Now, why do you want to reduce again? Well, I think there is always a goal. So basically, the most important reason is to reduce your footprint by 50% in 5 years' time. It's a hell of a job. And how can you do this? Actually, that's why platforms like Apicbase exist, because we do not only report on your footprint. This is actually a consequence of what you are doing in Apicbase. And Apicbase has a platform with many different modules, starting at menu engineering, menu development, going all the way through procurement, inventory management, central production kitchen, and internal ordering, to BI and insights, which allow you actually to really understand the flow of food through your kitchen. And when you implement a system like Apicbase, you can actually optimize your menus by simply replacing ingredients with other ingredients to reduce the carbon footprint emission, but also track your waste and try to reduce your waste, because it'll be very clear which ingredients are the most wasted ones and how you can actually take action on reducing that. You can also procure in an efficient way, so you don't have excess inventory, things like that. And you can also use your knowledge within the organization to collaborate with chefs within your organization so that everybody is in one line and understands the whole, the recipes that they need to use to reduce your carbon footprint. And Apicbase has this platform which is actually covering the whole back of house of your organization so that you can actually not just be more sustainable, but also improve your food safety, save costs, and get better operational excellence. And one thing that's really powerful is that we are also integrated, or we can be integrated with front of house platforms. So if you want to communicate your carbon data to your end users to build, for example, trust and brand awareness, then you can actually just use our API and the data within Apicbase on a recipe level to communicate the CO2 footprint in your organization. And this will allow the customer to make a thoughtful decision on whether or not they want to have the veggie burger or the meat burger. Now, this was actually an introduction into Apicbase and also into carbon footprint emissions and how Apicbase solves that for you. So now it's time to go to the demo. And for that, I introduce Tess.
Thank you, Carl, and hello, everyone. We're really excited. And so I would like to first let you know that as we begin this, you'll start to see a poll at the bottom of your screen while we are performing this for you. Okay. So welcome again to our CO2 impact and ecological footprint and our sustainability program. What I want to start with first, and where we start with the program, is here. Here we're going to be setting the values for the CO2 footprint per kilogram that you desire. Currently, we know that there is not an international standard set, so this gives you the opportunity to determine and set your goals and values right here. We start with the minimum and we set our maximum, and from there, we can simply drag with these easy circles all the remaining indicators that we need from green to red. So that's what these values are going to do for us, both in our ingredients and throughout the platform. And you're going to see that in just a minute. Again, we have our minimum and our maximum, and we just slide these bars across to match and to meet what we need. From here, we're going to go ahead and jump into ingredients, and let's see how this all works. Okay, so here we've prepared for you an ingredient, and we can see in this ingredient that all of our values from our third-party supplier come in. Apicbase is able to support 4 of these standard indicators: the protein source, land use, water consumption, and the CO2 equivalent emission. As Carl mentioned earlier, we also support up to 70 eco labels if that is included in your data, and we're adding more every day. Now let's go ahead and look into recipes. But before we do, you'll notice right here in that standard indicator for your CO2 equivalent emission that this ingredient is in fact red, very high. That's based on our values that we set just a moment earlier. Jumping into the recipe, what we're going to see here that we prepared for you in our soft taco is that we have the footprint. So in our footprint tab, what you're going to see is all of the data calculated for you on your recipe based on those standard indicator ingredient values that we saw from your third-party supplier. So you see here the total land use, the water consumption, as well as your CO2 equivalent emission. We can easily see right now, based on those values, that this recipe is very high in the CO2 equivalent emissions based on our values and goals. What's great about this with Apicbase, though, is it takes it a step further. We know that you want to be able to report. We know you want to be able to also plan, take action, and reduce. Those are all part of this new constituency. So when we scroll down a little bit further, this is where the magic actually happens. You'll notice that Apicbase automatically calculates the weight of the impact based on the ingredient data that we were looking at earlier. So the weighted value of each ingredient based on its weight in the recipe itself will be calculated here. So we can easily see where to start taking action and start reducing the carbon equivalent emission in our menus. Here we can see how pork and ground beef is the highest impact in this specific recipe, and it is easily followed by the tortilla and taco shells, and we also have potatoes as well. Now, for you to see the power of this, we wanted to create for you a comparison, right? So we know that our pork and ground beef has the highest impact in this recipe. So what do we do if we take action and we replace that? And we've prepared that for you today. In our soft taco mushroom detail, when we go to the footprint, we can see here already a difference. We replaced our pork ground beef with the mushrooms, and we can already see the new calculation of the recipe itself. You see the decrease in the land use, the water consumption, as well as now our CO2 equivalent emission for this recipe is yellow. That's moderate. So what a change, right? When we scroll down into that magical space, right, we see now that the mushrooms impact, our filler, is not actually the highest in all of our ingredients, right? It's actually about moderate. We now see that Apicbase helps us to change the weight, shift it, right? And we see in those ingredient impact shifts that tortillas are now something that we can take a look at and start to also decrease that CO2 impact ecological footprint. So my favorite part as well outside of this is the next step that we give you. So as we talked about, it's plan, as Carl also had mentioned, it is about reporting, planning, acting, and reducing. And we want to give you more power and control over that from where it starts. And that's in procurement and purchasing. So we have provided for you the ESG and sustainability dashboard. Here, this is where you can see exactly as you see right now, the high level metrics, right? Because part of this initiative is that you're also going to have to be able to report what it is that you're purchasing, the impact those items have on these standard indicators. And we wanted to provide that for you right now. Here at the top, you can see the high level metrics are broken down by the CO2 emissions, the land use, and the water consumption. This is over a period of 90 days. You can see here that you have the option, it actually breaks it down for you as well by protein source. And if you want to focus on one of the other standard indicators, you can actually do that very easily with a drop down here, and it'll go ahead and update the dashboard for you. We can see our data health. So while we're starting to receive that data from our third-party suppliers, if we're missing something or something's not linked, we can actually identify that, right? Because we want to make sure that we're reporting correctly and that we have full visibility. Here we can see our metrics over time. So we can see exactly the weight, right, of our CO2 emissions in our ordering from July, August, September. You see this over 3 months, right? You can also come here and easily drop down and select any of the other standard indicators. And you can also filter this by group. So right now it's by no group. We just see the total, but we can actually break that down by supplier or by the protein source. Now, it's not just enough, right, for us to just look at ingredients, right? We want to be able to see this and control this across the entire organization. And we want to be able to see who is succeeding, meeting their goals, because we also learn from one another. So as you can see here, we see those metrics per outlet. So you're able to have that visibility, that planning, to take that action and make those reductions across your organization. You can see the top 15 articles. So when you are starting to make your plan on where you want to start reducing, you have guidance right here. We can see the emissions by your order values over time as well. And then finally, we do offer you 2 detailed exports. The first one is by ingredient, and it includes all 5 of the measures here. So we see the order value, your weight, your order weight per kilogram, and then how it's broken down against the standard indicators. You have an option to edit these. You can look at it per outlet, or you can actually just drill down even further into one of those indicators if you choose. And at the bottom, you have your line by line level detail. Talk about technology working for you, right? And at Apicbase, we want to help you report, plan, act, and reduce. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tess, for this demo. I hope this was already very clear. And obviously, as with everything within Apicbase, it doesn't stop there. We are a SaaS business, so we keep on developing our technology and our product. And we have many more dashboards planned to join this one, as well as extra features on recipe and menu level. So for that reason, stay tuned for the next releases. Voila. So this was basically the introduction into carbon footprint in Apicbase, and again a recap on why you want to do this. So quick look at if there's any questions. So let me check this. So there's one question about the protein value of ingredients. As you should have seen, I think as you saw in the demo, this is absolutely possible, and we will also you can also filter on these. Another question is whether or not you need a connection with a third-party supplier, or if Apicbase owns the data. No, you need a connection with a third-party supplier. There is many different suppliers with many different philosophies on the way this is calculated, and Apicbase has taken the decision to display that data and to give you extra value on that data, but we are not the owners of the data. There is a question if this is viable for small restaurants or only for chains. Obviously, everybody can benefit from this, but maintaining a system such as Apicbase is obviously something that you need to put some time in. So if you are a single restaurant, it might be more beneficial to do this in different ways. But if you if you start having 3 to 5 outlets or restaurants, then switching to a system like Apicbase is an interesting choice. There was also a question whether this will be available online. Yes, it will. We will publish this on our website afterwards, and you will all get an email when this is done. Okay, so another question about where the low-level data comes from. So there is parties that focus entirely on this. So there is there's third-party suppliers that generate this data based on the ingredients that you supply them, and they will enrich that data, and then you can use this within Apicbase. So it comes from third-party suppliers. The trust, there is a question about how can we trust data from suppliers? Obviously, this is a choice that you will need to make to where you put the trust in which third-party supplier. This is something we have, obviously, good connections with some of those third-party suppliers. But it is a choice that you need to make based upon the data that they present to you. Obviously, this is a very new domain, so a lot of new suppliers will probably appear, or some will disappear. It's an important choice to make, so you choose the right supplier for this data. There's a question about how the values of the carbon footprint is set. I assume you are referring to the levers that we offer in Apicbase. So to recap that a little bit, so at this moment, there is no international standard on what is good footprint and what is a bad footprint. The most important is that you reduce the footprint that you have today with 50% in a few years' time. So you have to show the reduction of your footprint. And we allow you to set your own goals in Apicbase. So obviously there are certain standards that are not standards, but let's say offers to be a standard. We can also share them on our website after this webinar that are, let's say, going from certain non-profit organizations. And you can use those as guidelines and set your own goals within Apicbase. Then we continue down the line. There's quite some questions coming up, so I'll try to answer all of them. The program will be oriented to scope 3, but there is also the possibility to make 2 and 1 measurements. No, we do not offer a scope 2 and scope 1. This is something totally different. This is about your car park and about where you purchase your electricity. So this has nothing to do with F&B management or with your supply chain management. So that is something we will not tackle within Apicbase. Yes, you can share the data in frame of CSRD with your customers. There will be more exports available, but for now we have them in Excel. You can also download all of the graphs in a PDF or in a PNG format. So you can actually either go for the, let's say, the Excel way and make your own graphs, or use the graphs that are available within Apicbase and enrich your report with the actual graphs that you just saw. Question that I lost was does the sustainability metrics automatically connect to the existing data that sits inside our Apicbase library? Yes, of course. So the way that this works is that you make sure that the data that you have in Apicbase is sent to the third-party suppliers, and then obviously the suppliers will enrich this, and then we will connect this in Apicbase, so you won't have to do any of the recipeing again. So it is connected, and it is going. It is automatically. Footprint variables are only land, water, and CO2. Yes, and protein source. So these are the 4 ones that we currently support. In terms of the CO2, we actually in the backend support 2. It's cradle to gate and gate to gate. And these, but we currently use cradle to gate as the calculation standard, because that's also what has been indicated that is the most used one. I cannot, but I cannot exclude that we will use others to calculate later on. But the reality is also that not all of the suppliers will give you all of that data. So we do support all of that data, but you will have to check with the third-party supplier which data they provide. There is a question about the 50% reduction. Well, the European Union has set a 50% reduction of carbon footprint emissions by 2030 compared to the standards of 1990. So obviously, the way that you can contribute to this is not necessarily defined. It is just a matter of making sure that you reduce. So there is a question about businesses that operate globally, such as India, Singapore, etc., and if there are any regulations there. So we are currently obviously focusing quite heavily on Europe, because Europe has come with explicit legal framework. We know that there are other countries working on legislation, but I cannot tell you all of the different details legally from all of these countries. I would recommend you to consult local agencies to give you that answer. All right. So there is a question of if this module is a standard or an optional module. This is obviously an optional module because not everybody needs it at this moment, and we want to give you the opportunity to go for this module when you need it. So that's why this is an optional module. All right. I think that was the last question that I got. So that means that we can wrap this up. I want to thank Tess for the great product demo. I want to thank my team for preparing this webinar. And I want to thank the developers for building such a great product again. If you already work with Apicbase, I believe you can join me in saying that we're very confident and proud that Apicbase will help you in reducing your footprint, but also in improving your procurement processes, your inventory management processes, and obviously your centralization and standardization of recipes. If you have any questions following this webinar, or if you're interested in getting to know Apicbase better, don't hesitate to reach out. We have forms on our website. Just fill them out, maybe refer to this webinar, and we can then definitely get in touch with you. And we will be in touch to get some feedback on what you thought of this webinar. And with that, I thank you very much for joining, and I wish you a pleasant day. Goodbye.